It has been so good to light the Advent candles as we have been going along and having our kids be a part of this in a really special way. We have lit the candle of hope, peace, and now joy. And what an incredible reminder we have during Advent. This really is the most wonderful time of the year. This is the time of the year that we celebrate God in His love for us, entered into our mess to save us. It really is a thrill of hope. And each week we've been adding a little piece to it, a piece of the story that puts together this incredible jigsaw puzzle of sorts. And yet the pieces that God is putting together is so beautiful. And today we have the privilege of talking about what is joy and what is one of the most seductive ways that we can miss it. So joy, by the end of the 20th century, Joy to the World had become the most published Christmas carol in all of the USA. Joy to the world, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. And it's not just that one carol, Joy to the World. We also have Hark the Herald Angels Sing, joyful and triumphant. And we have the O Come, All Ye Faithful, joyful and triumphant. So there we go. In our Christmas carols is tucked this beautiful message, this invitation from God to experience joy. And in our next installment of this series, as we've been working through Matthew's gospel, him giving us the telling of the Christmas story, the birth of Jesus, the coming of the Savior of the world, the thrill of hope, I present to you today the wise men. So these wise men come from the east, and they have come to worship. Like you can just feel it. Like here is the wise men's vibe. Like they're rolling into town and they're saying, hey, we know that the King of the Jews is now born. We'd like to meet him. Where is he? And where is the gift table? We brought presents. Like they are just filled with joy. They are ready to meet the new king. Now, if you've been around Cornerstone for a while, you know I love to kind of point out those pieces where tradition has been inserted in a way that we're not sure about that one. Like, for example, we don't know how many wise men there were, even though the Christmas carol declares we three kings. Yes, we don't know. Hey, if I'm going to guess, I say 7 to 10. I don't know, and probably a whole entourage that came with them to take care of the camels and stuff. We just don't know. We don't know. And the other tradition is that, you kind of see the shepherds filing out, going back to take care of their flocks by night, and the wise men coming on in. Like they probably high-fived each other as they were coming and going to the manger scene, but we actually don't think that they showed up that night. There is almost no likeliness that the shepherds left and the wise men came in, and we'll see little indications of that in the text today, and then again as we pick up the story next week. And so we're on a hunt for the truth. Yes, there were 3 gifts brought, but we don't know how many wise men. Yes, they came and bowed before the king, but not on the same night that the shepherds did. What do we know? Well, here's what we know about these wise men, the Magi. They were from the region of Persia. So they came from the east. They had traveled hundreds of miles, maybe as much as 1,000. Now, when you and I hear about a 1,000-mile trip, we think, oh, crud, that'll take all day. And we're going to stop at a convenience store, and we're going to listen to podcasts, and we're going to let our kids binge on their electronic device so we don't have to talk to them. And we can make it in one day. We can travel 1,000 miles. Back then, and here's evidence number 1, it probably took them a year. They've probably been traveling a year since they saw the star. They were astronomers. They noticed stars. They were astrologers. They believed that you could see the future through those stars. Think horoscope. They were consultants, probably government employees. Fun little fact, this is the same group that Daniel was placed over when he served during the exile. They were big shots. They were well respected. And they had traveled hundreds, if not 1,000 miles to come and meet the new king. And that's their declaration. They're like, hey, we saw the star when it rose. We've put the pieces together that it's indicating the King of the Jews has been born. We'd like to meet him. We have gifts. Where's the gift table? So look at what they begin to describe. We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Like they're ready for the party to start. But when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Have you noticed that sometimes when we experience joy, the other group doesn't? Have you watched a game where one side of the stadium, like France yesterday, World Cup, celebrating, England, other side of the stadium, not so much? I've not been much of a soccer watcher growing up. I was kind of a football, not football. But did you realize 10 times as many people watch the World Cup as what watch our Super Bowl? It's a big deal. And when one group wins, the other doesn't. When one group celebrates at the close of an election, the other side's not partying anymore. Joy, this intense happiness. The wise men were checked in. Herod? Nah, not so much. What do we know about Herod? Well, there's multiple Herods in the Bible. This one's Herod the Great. He was called the Great because he got stuff done. He was a builder. Jerusalem and beyond looked really good after the 30-year reign of Herod the Great. But he liked to be Herod. And he eliminated anybody who looked like they could take his throne. He'd murdered his wife, multiple sons, and anybody else that got close. He was paranoid, and he was evil. His boss would be Caesar Augustus, Roman emperor, said of Herod, it's better to be his pig than his son. In the Greek language, it was a play on words, but basically what Caesar was saying is you have more chance of staying alive if you're an animal than if you're his kid. And Craig Evans, a historian, tells us it just kept getting worse the older Herod got. With some leaders, they seem kind of willing to take anybody out earlier, but as they get older, it's like, okay, my reign's probably coming to an end anyway. Herod got worse. He got paranoid at such an insane level that history tells us he had placed an order that on the day he died, an entire group of people were to be executed. And his thinking was this: on the day I die, there will be weeping in Jerusalem, even if I have to stage it by having other people killed at the same time. This dude was a psycho, like a psycho. But I'm going to slide an idea over to you. This psycho realized one truth about the coming of Jesus that most Americans miss. I'm just going to slide that idea over to you and we'll come back to it. Herod is not thrilled. Herod's already thinking, I'm going to take this punk out, and everybody else is freaked out. Because everybody knows that when Herod gets something like this under his crawl, somebody's going to die. And oftentimes it's lots of people. Like, I'm not going to cross him. I hope I don't catch, I'm just going to be really, really quiet. And the first question that Herod has is, where is he? Where is he? And so you can imagine, he goes to the priest, he goes to the scribes, and he says to them, where is the one born king of the Jews? Where is he? And I can imagine his experts saying, well, sir, Bethlehem, sir. How do you know it's Bethlehem? Well, like 700 years ago, the prophet Micah told us. Here's verse 6. You, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. From you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Sir, it's just in the text. Like you asked, I'm not saying he should be born in Bethlehem. I'm just telling you what the prophecy says. They were freaked out. Now let's pause for a second from the scene of the impending murder. Let's pause for just a second. Do you realize how, as we work through Advent, God keeps his promises and exceeds expectations? He is consistently doing that. And Matthew, as he's telling of Advent, he's telling Jesus, he's like, watch this. God keeps his promises and exceeds expectations. For 17 verses, the genealogy. God promised Abraham, through you, I'm going to make this great nation, and through your offspring, I'm going to bless all nations. David, you're going to die. You will hand over the baton of your throne, but one day, the one will come and he will be seated on the throne forever, one of your descendants. And then last week, what was made clear to Joseph and to Mary at the birth of Jesus, the prophecy of Isaiah fulfilled 700 years prior, a virgin will give birth. Not a virgin will conceive, a virgin will give birth. And he will be called Emmanuel, because the Spirit of God has come upon her in such a way that Jesus is fully God and fully man. God keeps his promise and exceeds expectations. You, Joseph, will name him Yeshua, because this adopted son of yours will save his people from their sins. They had been looking for a savior from the oppression of tyranny by Rome. What they hadn't expected is being set free from their sins. God keeps his promises and exceeds expectations over and over and over. Bethlehem. I'm telling you what, this is not what Mary expected. Like when she was a little girl and dreamed of one day being married and having a baby, Bethlehem was not on her list of hospital locations. Bethlehem was not her first choice, her second choice, or her backup plan. But basically everything having to do with the conception and the birth of Jesus has not gone as she expected. So she's probably not surprised by now. But if you know the story, as Luke's gospel tells us, Mary and Joseph are in Bethlehem because the Caesar called for a census, a taxing, a counting. And so they had to go to Joseph's hometown for him to be registered for their family. So they're in Bethlehem. It is not the place you'd want to have a baby. If you're Mary, you don't want to be away from your mom, from your family, the people who love you and would help you. This is not where you want to be, but this is where Mary is. By the declaration of God, 700 years ago, God keeps his promises and exceeds expectations. And this is the only time in the story when Herod and the wise men are thinking the same thing. What is their thought? Oh, wow, he's nearby. For Herod, I will find him. For the wise men, oh, we can find him. He's really close. So Herod brings the wise men back in. Remember, everybody else in Jerusalem is freaked out. because they know they have a psycho king. The wise men, they're from like 1,000 miles away. They have no way of knowing how Herod would react to the pronouncement of a newborn king. They have no clue. They came to throw a party. They wondered where the gift table was. And so Herod begins his deception. Check this out. Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. Now, I hope you're starting to catch on to the pattern. Do you already see what we're doing? We're like reading a verse, talk about it, read a verse, talk about it. For those of you that have been around Cornerstone for a while, you're like, Michael, this is basically every sermon. Yeah. Here's my hope. I actually hope at the end of this teaching, you are thinking, I could do that. I could do that. I hope you're thinking that. Number one of the most remarkable practices you can engage in for your own spiritual development is reading the Bible. You can do it. Read a little bit, hear from God. Read a little bit, hear from God. If you're at a place where you're like, I don't know how to do that, sign up for our next How to Study the Bible class. They wrapped up one session today. We're going to do it again. Make sure we know you want to study the Bible. We'll help you. We'll help you get the hang of it. You put your little ESV study Bible or a little commentary there, and you're putting the pieces together. Where'd the wise men come from? Who's this Herod guy? And you can actually hear from God. I hope by the time we're done today, you find yourself thinking, I could read the Bible this week. Michael didn't say anything I couldn't have figured out myself. And I hope, truly, I hope a few of you find yourself thinking, I could do that. I could study, find the message, and present it to people. I could be a teacher of God's word. I could be an elder. I could be a preacher. I genuinely hope that some of you are beginning to sense God's calling on your life to serve in that way. God speaking through you to his people. So put yourself here. Why did Herod call them in secretly? What we know for sure is to get the date. He wanted to know when the star appeared. Actually, this is evidence number 2 that the wise men don't come in the same night the shepherds leave. Because when we return next week to this story, he orders the execution of all male children in the Bethlehem vicinity 2 and down. If Jesus is still an infant, even a psycho doesn't order 2-year-olds dead. I would submit to you, Jesus by now is a year and a half old. So Herod rounds up. So he calls them in to find out the time. That's what we know. Now put yourself there. Why do you think he did that? Why would he secretly call in the Magi to tell him when the star appeared? I'm thinking that if he had the whole court, like if all his officers and servants and people around were in the room when he said this to them, like they know he's lying. Because what he says is, hey, remember, I want you to go, tell me where he's at, and then I'll go worship with you. I'm thinking somebody in the court bust out laughing. Like, he will not go to worship the new king. He'll go to kill the king. Or maybe they wouldn't bust out laughing or just bust out knowing that they would get killed, but they would go tell the Magi, hey, he doesn't want to go worship the king. I submit to you what Herod knew that most Americans don't. Herod knew if Jesus becomes king, I am king no longer. Herod The guy who would do anything, kill his wife and kids, to keep someone else from becoming king, knew that if Jesus becomes king, I am not. And so this whole deception thing starts playing out. Here's where we see in the Bible what I was referring to. He sent them to Bethlehem saying. So he called them in secretly with a ploy, deception. And here's where he expresses it. He says, you go and search diligently. When you found him, bring me word, coordinates, address, let me know that I may come and worship him. Total lie. And the guys head out. Now I want you to think about this deception. Herod is deceiving the wise men. I'm going to submit to you, as Americans, we deceive ourselves. His deception was, oh yeah, this is great. This is wonderful. I'm all for it. Let me know. I will go worship. No, he won't. Now here's what we as Americans do. Did you realize that Advent is the most popular time in America to go to church? Christmas and Easter, but more Christmas even than Easter. Like, this is the time. If you're going to show up at a church that worships Jesus, this is the time. This is the time when Americans think, oh, you know what? It's Christmas. I think I'll go to church this week. But I submit to you that based on previous evidence, those who will just show up for Christmas have absolutely no intention of making Jesus Lord, King of their lives. They're just going to go to church. We can do the same thing. It doesn't have to be once a year. It could be once a month or every week. We just show up at church, not intending to make Jesus king, just because that's what you do. It's Christmas or it's Sunday. Or we're fine with Jesus being king as long as it's King Genie. Like, you know what a genie is? All power for me. The genie will serve my kingdom. The genie will serve me by allowing me to be and do what I want to be and do. He will serve me. Or we make it cutesy Christmas. I kind of like to pray to the 8-pound, 6-ounce baby Jesus. That's the one I like. The one that's like Jesus with a sword coming out of his mouth, nah, I don't like that one. Like, that's violent. I want cutesy Jesus. Like, that's the one I can smile and talk about, and, well, really, I just make it all about me. You see, Herod knew, if Jesus is king, I'm not. Do we? So he sent the guys out. He's like, okay, all right, team, go find him. Come back. I'll go worship. Lie. And they left. And as they strolled out of Jerusalem, maybe as they went through the gate, they looked up. Look at verse 9. Behold, the star that had been seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. Now, this is where the story gets supernatural. Like, wow. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid reading my Bible, or when I was a young pastor teaching this story, and I read the star came over the place where they were and went before them. We have movement. Like, I'm imagining God, the creator of the universe, who spoke these planets and stars, suns, into existence. Like, I'm imagining God reaching out and grabbing one of them and moving it and shining it. So it was like, like, it had a whole soundtrack to it in my mind. Is that what God did? Like, did he grab a star and move it across the sky and shine down on Jesus? Maybe. Or maybe in eternity past, like when it was just God, Father, Son, Spirit, and God planned this out, creation, salvation through Jesus. Maybe he set stars and planets in orbit in such a way that this conjunction happened at the time that would grab the attention of these astronomers who knew the stars and planets, who were astrologers, and they were convinced when planets and stars do this, there's a new king born. And they would tie it to maybe that ancient prophecy that Daniel told them about the king of the Jews to be born. And they connected the dots and they took off from Persia to come 1,000 miles to find Jesus. And they came to worship him. And when they left Jerusalem, the star actually moved. They call it apparent retrograde motion, if you're an astronomer. And we geeked out for a little bit, like Jay was looking up articles and I was looking up videos. He likes to read, I like to watch videos, and found some really cool stuff out there, like really cool stuff. Google it. Like the Bethlehem Star, there was a documentary, it's like 15 years old, and it looks 15 years old, but it's like, wow, is that possible? That this king planet, Jupiter, and the king star, Regulus, came together in a way that's never happened again since? Like, did you realize that these astronomers have so tracked the stars and the planets that they now have computer programs where they can tell you where the stars and the planets were on any date in history, backward or forward? What if this triple conjunction, planet and star coming together 3 times, that would have disappeared in about 3 BC and then reappeared in the spring when Jupiter and Venus came together in a way that's not been seen since? And a way that, as astronomers say, there's this retrograde motion, that it actually looks to be a star moving backwards. So you tell me, which is more impressive? Which is more awesome? God grabbing a star or a couple of celestial bodies and moving them and zooming them in, or a few gazillion years ago in the mind of God, he had a plan that they would come together at the same time. The Son of God would be born. Which is more awesome to you? That's you. What the wise men saw was an indication to them that they knew right where the new king was. God had met them very personally and pointed them to Jesus. And so they headed to Bethlehem, as told by Micah and as confirmed by the star. And here's our last verse. Going into the house, they saw the child. That's number 3. Doesn't say baby Jesus. It says child Jesus. You can translate this word toddler. The child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. These aristocrats, government employees, consultants, astrologers, from a long, long way away, willingly bowed down and worshiped a child. Now, track with me for just a second. Where had God brought them from? Long way away. Where had God brought them from? A country where they worship lots of gods. You do you. You worship your God. I'll do mine. We'll be fine. That's the culture they came from. They were apparently former heathens. And God brought them from 1,000 miles away to come and worship Jesus. Now, do I think they fully understood what was happening? No, probably not. Did they understand the virgin birth? This conception that pointed to the full humanity and full deity of Jesus? Probably not. Did they understand that about 30 years later, Jesus would go to the cross and die in our place and invite all of us to have freedom from sin and relationship with God eternally? Do I think they understood all of that? Nope. I'm a student of the Bible. I've been doing this a long time. I still don't understand it all. And the more I read God's word, the more I realize he keeps his promises and exceeds expectations. So consistently. But what I do know is that these guys genuinely worshiped Jesus. They bowed before the one they knew to be king. And for some of us, that's our story. We've been a long way from God, and he used something to get our attention. For them, it was a star. For shepherds, it was an angel. For Joseph, it was a dream. Over the years, I've heard many stories of the things God has used to grab his people's attention. Sometimes it's a diagnosis. Sometimes it's a lost job. Sometimes it's a failed marriage. Sometimes it's the death of a loved one. Sometimes it's the crushing of a life dream. Sometimes it's something they saw in the sky in the shape of. Sometimes it's melting snow. Sometimes it's a song at just the right moment that God uses to genuinely capture the attention of his people. And in that moment, the gospel's not all there in that snow or cloud or event. But God consistently uses things, events, to grab the attention of his people and bring them to Jesus. Maybe that's your story. Maybe you find yourself here today thinking, I cannot even believe I'm here. Can't believe I'm even listening in. I've never believed this before, but the crazy thing is, I do. I actually believe the validity of this story, and I don't even know why. I've committed my life to oppose this story, and I sense that it's true. And God, in his grace, is inviting you, maybe a former heathen, maybe a former hater, to come home to Jesus the Christ. And for some of us, we badly, desperately need to learn from this delusion that we are in that Herod was not. He was evil. He was wicked. He would order the malicious execution of all boys 2 and down. He was psycho. He was evil. You are not like that. But he understood one piece that many of us have missed. And if not us, many of our friends. And when we see what he saw, it's actually an invitation from God to experience the real joy of Christmas. Here's the joy of Christmas. When you can say, Jesus became king, and I am king no longer. Because there can only be one king. When you come to know the reigning, risen King of the universe, and you surrender your life to our good King, you are free. You are free from needing to have it all under control. You are free from sin. You are free from those old chains. But you are not free to continue to be the king of your life. There can only be one king. And for some of us, today is God's invitation to crush that whole baby Jesus thing that has allowed us to turn Christmas into cutesy Christmas. To crush that whole thing of thinking of Jesus as the genie. He serves me. To crush our thinking from, well, it's Christmas, I guess I'll. And not give Jesus the seat of king in our lives. Today, God is inviting us to respond to the gospel. Whether you've been a long way away or you've been here all along, to find the joy of Christmas. Let me pray for us. Father, it is a joy to present the truth of Advent, of Christmas. You, in your love, compelled to bring salvation to us. In our brokenness, in our delusions, in our arrogance, God, thank you for still wanting us. And thank you that for those of us who have been a long way from you, even this year, thank you for those little ways that are personal to us, meaningful to us, that you have used to capture our attention and bring us to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And God, thank you for the power of your word, the power of your spirit to bring enlightenment into places where we've been playing Christmas. We've turned Jesus into our genie. We've made him a cutesy baby, but not Lord of all. God, thank you for those ways that you are bringing clarity to the idols, to the delusion, to the lies, where we have been missing the real joy of Christmas. And God, I ask today by your Spirit that you would set your people free, that you would bring your kids unto salvation through Jesus. And so God, with much hope and expectation as we respond in this time, Holy Spirit, I pray that you would bring new hearts, new life, new freedom. God, do that to your glory in the life of your children. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.